Hello and welcome to the EchoChamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves, and today we're hiding away from the sun in the little room, Martin. We're sitting here, lads, with about 17 packs of ice on our backs and after sun dripping off Martin's ears.
26 degrees in the car on the way in, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. 26. This is going to be one hot day.
I'm delighted to be joined by Martin because for the first time in his life he has a smartphone. Is it a Nokia 6310 or?
This is goes back about 10 years, best phone I ever had. So I got a battery for it and revived it, and it's better than any of your smartphones. Better.
And Nokia, folks, I'm convinced that's one of the Garda Commissioner's missing phones. That's all I can say.
One of the many.
That could save Maurice McCabe. You were doing. Much more importantly, we're delighted to be joined in the Tortoise Shack by journalist with the Times Irish edition, Micheal Cogley. Micheal, do we have to put this behind a paywall, or
not at all? Not at all. You can farm it out as free as you like.
Yeah, well, listen, mate.
Have any problems with that.
Thanks for coming on. It's becoming a bit of a cliche when we tell people where we are. The DCU grads go, "Oh, I know it well." I think they all know it well because the Chinese and the off license is quite close by.
It was a great spot. Jesus, was here for 3 years. Spent a lot of time down around Santry, Whitehall, and all that kind of stuff. But even in around here in Glasnevin is a lovely area. Loved it to bits when I was here.
This is the Ballymun part of Glasnevin, mind you.
I know, full well where it is.
No. Honestly, it was very funny because we were talking downstairs, and I said we'd only had Sean Defoe on a couple of weeks ago, and he's another product of the journalism school. Whereas Martin over here, he thinks he's been a journalist for years. Like he's not even got a driver's license.
That qualifies, right?
Yeah, of course. With our public transport, you would need a driver's license to get around the city.
No, I did make fun of the paywall, and I suppose we want to get straight into that because, from my point of view, it's been a bit of a bugbear, where we've seen report after report saying that actually public trust in the media has actually been ebbing away.
Yeah. And
when we had Sean in, Sean was saying he's the political correspondent for Communicore. So that could be anything. That could be 22 radio stations or whatever we're up to at this stage. And you're thinking, well, you're spreading resources even thinner. We're looking at, you can't give them, and then we can come at them and say, well, you're not giving us a more nuanced view of the news. And you're saying, well, because we can't actually finance it.
Yeah.
What's your take on it now? Because you've worked for the Independent and now you're in with the Times. How do you see the model developing?
I think paywalls are probably the way to go. If I were to be completely honest about it, when I was in college, I was very, very worried about the industry and where it was going to go. And then I saw what the Times were doing, and I used to love reading the Times even before I joined just the London edition. Thought it was really good quality, thought the website was excellent, and by the end of it I was kind of happy to pay for it, and I felt that was okay. And then if you look even further abroad, you look at the New York Times and the Financial Times, once you're producing good enough quality, I think people will start to pay for it. With ourselves it's slightly more difficult because obviously there's loads of ways of getting free news, like loads of it, and that's very, very frustrating and very debilitating, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And there's nothing more disappointing than seeing your story getting lifted, one at the worst, without any accreditation. But even with accreditation, you're kind of hurting your own industry by doing so. So that's frustrating in a way, but I do think that it's a revenue stream that we desperately need. And I think it's probably there's a couple of startups in I think Finland and Sweden that have done micropayments per article. Now, I don't know if Ireland's a big enough audience for that, but it's certainly something that's worth exploring as well.
That is the issue. I think it's economy of scale. And we look at Ireland and you've only 4.5 million people that you're selling into. 5% of them are maybe, if you're right in a certain, say politics mainly, 5% are maybe interested, of that, and maybe then 60% are interested when they run up to an election, but they switch off then for the rest of it,
Yeah.
I saw a piece recently from the States where where writers were getting paid $60 for 200 words, and that's what it's down to now, $60 for 200 words.
Yeah.
Now, there's people getting very rich off media, and we've seen it here. The richest people in Ireland are all involved in media.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's the model that's broken, not necessarily that you need a paywall. I think the model where all the money is funneled into a few pockets.
Yeah.
That's what's broken. Great journalists, great editors, great sub-editors And they're all getting screwed by the top guys. They're not getting screwed by the guys who aren't buying the newspapers.
Yeah.
It's the guys who are coining the money out of it.
Yeah. I don't think there's money to coin it. A lot of it, though, Martin, when you look at so a lot of them are loss-making.
That's what I would argue. Do you think that there's the demand there that if you did switch the model around that it would become sustainable? I think
Ireland is unique in that the market is very, very small.
Yeah.
Okay, so your actual sales of newspapers or sales of whatever are very small, and that's very hard to overcome. We're really only city size.
Yeah, we are, and especially like I suppose when you look at, like, if I were to, even when I was in college, I was kind of thinking, why is anyone giving it away for free in the first place? Like, it's very 0080. Why was this being given away? But even now, I don't think it's too late. I'd like to see the biggest broadsheets and biggest news organizations in the country come together and just agree that it's going to have to be paid for, or you're going to have to add some form of value to the news that you produce. Because at the moment, like in a lot of places like the Indo, have some fabulous journalists and they're producing amazing work every week, same with the Irish Times, and just giving it away for free. It just, you kind of have to wonder, like, because previously obviously you paid for a paper and that's where your revenue came from. So I don't know. I'd say that we need to develop a value for our own work that isn't probably being applied yet in the Irish market.
I agree. I think people don't. I think there is no real solidarity amongst the organisations. That's clear. Okay, we know that's clear. But what you also have to say is the public have every right to turn around and say, well, I can click in here and this fulfills my needs. We're looking at it. Martin mentioned the States. I think somebody said in America in a recent thing, there was over 60% of people rely on Facebook for their source of news. Yeah. I mean, okay, if you're happy enough to go down that rabbit hole, go ahead. But if you want, look on the flip side, we know the guys who were originally on Off the Ball became the second captains and then went through a metamorphosis into a paywall structure where they work through Patreon. Yeah. That's delivering. But, it really, people say, well, that's wonderful, but it took them years to get there. It did. And
they also, I think their big selling point is that they're extremely, not, a niche is probably the wrong word because they're covering football, they're covering a whole host of sports, but the type of comedy they have, the type of dry humor they have is loved by their followers. So then charging that became very easy. And then competition in the marketplace was basically against Off the Ball, which is now starting to ramp up and getting back to that place
which has actually gone right into the same, like they started Off the Ball AM, and that's purely an attack on, and it is, and there's no question about it. Like that's saying we're going to give it away for free and we're going to try and steal your lunch.
Exactly. The amount of work that must go into that show is incredible. Like an AM show every morning, or is 3 mornings a week or something. It's just crazy. 4 or 5 mornings a week, and it's 3 hours, Martin. Imagine, and you're giving it away.
What type of mornings we're talking about?
Yeah. No, like, just when you're going to bed. Just as you're going to bed, mate. But okay, so a paywall I think a paywall is going to turn off 70% of people almost immediately.
Yeah, you're probably right. And the thing is, at no point would we ever blame the consumer, not even remotely close. I did the very same thing. If I was coming across something that was like, okay, this is €20 a month, or I can go to this for free, I totally understand why they would veer towards the free. But I suppose when in the wake of kind of some of the stuff that's come out with Trump and even like you mentioned, my colleague Ellen Coyne as well, like some of the stuff that she's done is worth paying for. It's changed how we look at, like, some of her abortion coverage was incredible, and then the stuff that she did about the illegal clinics as well, and that is policy changing work.
And exposing the 2040 stuff as well, which alone was, when you're getting kicked back from ministers standing on the steps of buildings, it's actually journalism.
The way people absorb news is different. I mean, we all know the first paragraph, the first headline. It's very rare people are going down beyond that these days.
It is. And I think that's that probably has, like, as much as I love Twitter, that's probably a bit where that's coming from, and the reactionary element, whereas I'd rather not be fully informed. I have my opinion and now I'm going to drop it out there.
Oh yeah. Just be thankful I have an opinion. Don't ask me how I got it.
Exactly. I didn't need the context, that's why.
Just give me the hot takes. Just give me
Well, it'd make my job a lot easier if we just had to write the second par. Write 2 pars and then just just cut it off from the bottom, it would work fine.
No. The formula is to then grab a catchy line, bold it, and put it in and throw it in the center. Then throw a picture up. All of a sudden, you're down to 175 words. You know?
If you notice, even now, if you get letters from your bank or any officialdom that you're dealing with, they highlight the key points in the letter for you. So you don't actually have to read the whole thing. Appointment 12 o'clock Saturday. Yeah. Great, that's that one sorted. You know?
But it's the same with terms and conditions as well, where I think it just became a trend where it's like, I am absolutely not reading that. I don't care what's in it. I can sign away my soul and my firstborn child.
And we found out via data privacy that we have been.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, GDPR revealed that we have been. Every time we were clicking, do you accept these? You were actually giving them the right to share your browsing history with their partners.
Actually, that's coming up a lot at the moment. Every time you click on a news article, it's and then you have to click in and you have to disable all this shit before you can actually get back and read it.
But
that's turning me off stuff.
Oh,
I'm just going,
that'd be quite frustrating.
Yeah.
But the difference now, Martin, is you can actually say no and still read the article.
Yes.
Whereas you used to have to accept it to continue.
Yeah.
And but it's a bit of they're not saying no up front. You have to click in to know.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's I accept is the only button that you actually see.
The other one runs around the stick.
Okay, so that turns me off straight away. Completely turns me off. And that's good publications doing that as well.
Yeah, no, like I obviously because GDPR, it's kind of the way that they've had to produce things. You've had to kind of sign on to those kind of things. But yeah, I think being able to turn that down and to say no to that is probably a good thing for all of us involved.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it should really be opt in rather than opt out.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked to have seen that with GDPR. That you're automatically out unless you opt in.
Oh, even when Facebook did their big update after the Cambridge Analytica stuff, I actually put it off, I'd say, for 3 weeks. Remember that notification came up?
I'm not honest.
I just couldn't go at it for, like, it was about 4 pages, and this is meant to be, like, easy and digestible. I just can't. I just can't use my time for this and that.
Nope. Just the whole way down through. Yeah. No, you can't have that. No, not letting you have that either.
No, I think but it does show you though, like, because Facebook are profitable.
Yes,
you know but they are only profitable because a lot of people. I think it was Simon McGarr refers to them letting Facebook become their fingers. So they produce the content, but Facebook are the actual
take the line.
Yeah, they're.
But Facebook has taken a hit recently. Facebook numbers have taken a hit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reputational damage that was done recently is very close to irreparable. Like,
I think again, reading these American thing, I read some American, and they're saying that there is a decline in Facebook. You're not going to see. There will be incremental growth, but it's nowhere near the growth that has been there previously. Yeah. And they reckon Facebook has peaked, and that Facebook
probably has. And I think the timing of that data controversy was the worst imaginable because Facebook had rescinded for a lot of people back to kind of funny videos, no personal content, sponsored posts, all the way throughout, and it started to lose an awful lot of people. But the problem is they also own Instagram, which is where all the traffic's going to next. So it doesn't really matter. Like, they just keep going. And they own WhatsApp as well. Like, it's crazy.
I had this discussion about Instagram and other forms of social media, you know, and you can pretty much divide them up. You have Facebook is for parents and grandparents. Twitter is for political anorex. Yeah. Instagram is for, you know, look at my lovely dinner I've just had. Snapchat is for the kids who don't want the parents to know what they're talking about. Yeah. You know, each one has a different purpose. It's not one takes over for them.
But that's not the point, though. The point is they're all owned by the same kind of small, limited circle of people, and so it doesn't matter. It's the illusion of choice. Yeah, you know, I remember when RBS were buying ABN AMRO before the crash. The idea was to become they wanted to be the first or second biggest bank in the world, and at the time they owned several of the banks on the high street, and they used to refer to it as the illusion of choice, that someone was going around shopping around from a mortgage and they were literally going to end up with an RBS mortgage whether they wanted it or not, you know? And that's where the term too big to fail came from, because they literally became way too big to fail. There was just too much there. Whereas what we have now, we have actual media outlets, we have news, we can be hypercritical of RTE, but yet sometimes nothing changes in Ireland until an RTE investigations documentary is produced or a report comes out. We do kind of sometimes govern by outrage, and things like, you know, the stuff around the cervical checks, things like that. They're where we get change. We don't necessarily get it because the politicians set out to do it.
Why not? You sue the arse off somebody and make it too expensive for them to commit the same mistake again. They'll keep making the same mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And like, even I think the litigation element of that for Irish media is very, very scary as well. I mean, if you look at, I think both the Irish Times and the Indo both have fairly strong cash files there as it is. Like, they can probably take a litigation battle.
One big litigation battle is enough to finish any newspaper.
Yeah, it probably is. And even if you look at ourselves, like, we obviously have the parent company in London, which obviously will offer the backing, whatever, but at the same time, we're almost quite like a startup in a way, in that, like, the funding is siphoned off to Ireland. Like, we are a separate entity and we're working away at that regard. So if you're looking at the balance sheet over in London, you see all of a sudden, there's a massive lawsuit coming towards the Times. It's going to cost us a fortune.
Well, you've got to look at and we don't very rarely talk about it in any circles, is the laws here governing defamation, governing libel. The laws here are draconian. They're absolutely outrageous laws. And they protect the rich because it's not open. Somebody calls me a bollocks on Twitter. I can't go to the courts and sue them.
But you are.
And you can say it on a podcast as well.
You can say, like, no. The law of defamation. You only have to be made look bad in good society.
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry, Martin, mate. You walk into any room and they go, look at the gouger. Everybody mind your wallets.
But no, defamation laws have really strangled stories in this country. Strangled them.
Yeah.
And it only benefits the 1%. It does not benefit anybody else.
Yeah. No, I would tend to agree with you. I think if we were able to hold true, given the right of response as our main governing part of the defamatory laws, then I think we'd be fine. But it does seem to go beyond that in terms of just how strenuous it can be and how strict it can be and how punishing it can be for media organisations as well, for stuff that is supposedly insinuated but is never actually said.
But even more importantly, you can not defame someone and just be accused of defamation and end up costing you a lot of money just to get to the point where you win, where you won't even risk writing the article the next time. And that's the chilling effect that we talk about. So we have a toxic cocktail where we have media outlets that are literally hand to mouth in terms of we're spreading journalists thinner. We've new journalists coming into the industry. We spoke to Steph Costello, who's again, she has written for several organisations from Hot Press and across what was it, her.ie, where she was doing some work as well. And some of these models were were in the, get people clicking through. You know, that's not sustainable either.
No, I mean, even if you look at now, there's always some debate around who's the most popular news source in the country. From my time there, I was fairly convinced it was independent.ie because of the sheer volume of numbers coming through, but there seems to be an argument over whether it's that or the Journal as well. But it's the same, like, that it's the problem of scale. So if the Independent were seemingly trying to mimic what the Daily Mail were doing, where they were able to just get the click, not in terms of editorial content, but in terms of kind of the volume of clicks was the way they were going to make their money by advertising revenue, and the more clicks you have, the more valuable your ads are, that kind of thing. But again, it's the scale problem where Ireland's not big enough to run that model. I mean, the Daily Mail has massive readers in the UK, like huge, and that can work. That's sustainable.
It's easier when you're thrown it into a population of 60 million than it is into 4.5. Like, it's just not even. It's the same equivalent. If you remember growing up, if a fella had a number one song in Ireland, he maybe sold 120 tapes or singles or whatever it was, and whereas if they could break America or break the UK, they made money.
You're looking at a country that has a very small population. You have a media that's very concentrated, and yet you go up to DCU and there's class loads of you guys coming out every year.
I don't know why. I really don't know why.
It doesn't. I mean, other courses, you'll find they'll wax and wane depending on the demands of society. Like the construction end courses, all waned and they're all back again. Yeah. But journalism, sort of this steady flow of people, and because you have to do unpaid internships, there is a class issue in there as well, big time class issue in there.
There is. I mean, the reason I went into it, I think, at the start was, well, when I was very young and I saw the Veronica Guerin movie, and this is really kind of pie in the sky stuff. Like, I was so inspired and all that nonsense. But
Robert Fisk watched the Foreign Correspondent movie and decided he'd run out to Lebanon, so you're not far behind.
So that's kind of where it started originally, and then when I was in secondary school, writing English was my favourite subject, and there's thousands of students across the country who feel that very same way, that writing English is the best thing. And then you were looking at English in Trinity, and it was like, it's a bit, I don't know, it was a bit artsy for my likes, not as hands-on as I would have liked. So then journalism is the other opportunity where you get to go and write. And I'd say that's what drives an awful lot of people into it. But it's very, very clear, not the most stable industry to be in, not the most, like, even at the moment, I'm kind of looking at, I've another 40 years to go at this, and you're kind of fingers crossed that this is going to work.
I don't care another 40.
No.
AI is writing stories.
I know.
Another 4 or 5, maybe.
I know. We'll get into the audio game then, over to radio, it'll be fine. Protect us from the robots.
Actually, the figures came out recently about podcasts. And Ireland, twice as popular. Podcasts are twice as popular. So you're right about radio, but not maybe mainstream radio.
Yeah.
There is a very good developing market in podcasting, and only the sponsors are so far behind. Lidl sponsors so far behind. Yeah. So far behind. But that's changed. Dunphy's after getting Tesco on board.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Now, that's a risk for Tesco, because the first time Dunphy's going to stick his foot in it. So,
of course, yeah.
And the first time he does, there'll be pressure put on Tesco's to withdraw the advertising. Now, have Tesco's got the moxie to say, look, this is entertainment. Yeah. We're selling it as entertainment. We're sponsoring entertainment. Yeah. It's not actually news media. Okay, there's elements of that, but it is entertainment, and we'll stand by it because people are still listening. The numbers are still there.
Yeah, they can be protected by that, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think we're moving towards that model where you'll get sponsors for shows like this. 38% compared to, what was it in England? 16%?
There was a much more, there was a much higher infiltration rate, I think is how they were referred to it, is how it was being listened.
But we do like to listen to radio, and we have it on all the time. Podcasts are just radio to order.
Yeah, it's a strangely resilient market in Ireland for some bizarre reason, but I get them entirely. I think the first one that really grabbed me was the New York Times' daily podcast, and it's 20 minutes long, fills you up with every bit of US news that is relevant. Not every bit, but the most important US news stories of the day. And you really leave with something valuable by the end of it. You really leave with something that you're like, okay, I've gotten something out of that, and then move on from there. And then I started subscribing to Second Captains, and I was like, Jesus. Wow, like a lot of the stuff they do is just incredible.
Well, I listen. You could sadly go in and see a lot on my podcast feed. Monday morning is a highlight when all of the stuff comes out, and that's the sad part. There you go, folks. One of the best parts of my day is Mondays and lunchtime when my podcast notifications just start kicking off like mad. But you know, there is an element of you listen when you want and you can turn it off when you want. But I also think local radio does very well in Ireland. Not just, you know, your national stations. I've seen the numbers on, we know with the JLNRs are always out and it's always a backslapping exercise, but you always see the likes of KFM building audiences and things like that because people listen to their local stories, you know?
They do. And I think as well, like the print media in local areas have suffered very much so. Like even where I'm from in Wexford, I think was it the Echo that was shut down down there, and just like now there's loads of papers down in Wexford, but that was one of the bigger ones, and for that to go was like kind of a real hit for the area, especially around Enniscorthy. But yeah, I think because print media in local areas is suffering as much as it is,
it does increase the prominence. Is very beholden to a few individuals within areas, and we saw that very recently with the Michael Lowry trial. We saw that very recently. The Tipperary Star came out with that headline. Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable. Now that's, anybody who's in the newspaper industry has to look at that and just shake their head and go, you give us all a bad name. You just give us all a bad name.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a particular topic that would get me so high up in the libel stakes. But I completely understand where you're coming from.
What do you think of people in Malta? Have you heard of these golden visas? Have you heard of this? I heard a podcast recently about the golden visas and the bank that's run out of Malta.
Yeah.
Oh my God. the criminality that's been filtered through is just, it was on the BBC World Service, lads. I'd say listen to it, and you only have to look at the list of clients on this the bank is only about 5 or 6 years old, and someone paid a couple of million to get his passport, and it's run out of Malta, and it's a who's who of who you don't want to mess with.
But on the flip side too, journalism, because it's gone down that clickbait route, has let itself down a lot. And you're right, there's no solidarity amongst people. There's so many journalists out there who call themselves freelance these days, and they're not really freelance. They're writing 200 words for this publication every week, 200 words for this publication every week. You do have steady work. It's just not a lot of steady work.
Yeah.
So the model, journalists now have to write to order. If I want to get something into the Indo, I know I can't mention King Malta. There's no way I can write about Malta. But then again, even with the Times have people. They bring in people simply to create controversy.
Yeah.
And to get the clickbait, to get the conversation going. But it's not necessarily a conversation that anybody's having anywhere else except in the Irish Times. Nobody really wants to know what colour David Quinn's jocks are. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I know.
And yet, there it is, time again.
Yeah, I presume you're also referring to that was the A to Z of the alt-right as well.
Yeah, the glossary and things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a trope now online where it says, I regret to inform you, the Irish Times is at it again. And that's become the trope. But you have to say it's the guy who replies to you and says something and says, oh, this is definitely you're so wrong, Tony, here's a Jordan Peterson video. And that is just, that's most of my replies, lads. But on the flip side, okay, I think there is a model that can be done between whether it's some form of pay and some form of advertising where you find a synergy. I also think that people are going to have to understand that if you want actual good journalism, there is a value to it. And if you're content enough to just get your news from Facebook, well, that's just where you're going to go.
There is the money side of it too. If you want a diversity of opinion, if you want to pick up what's going on, and you've got to read 3 or 4 different things to get that diversity, then you're paywalling 3 or 4 different things, and you're part of the locked out generation where every cent makes a difference.
Yeah,
every cent makes it. It's not all going on avocado toast and lattes,
I can vouch for that.
People are actually trying to save for deposits and save for, if they're really lucky, they might be able to buy a house in 50, 60 years. And people are looking that far ahead. Yeah. Like I saw a thing recently, people should really start putting away for their pensions at 20. No house, can't afford kids, and I'm going to save for a pension. Well,
that's why pensions are actually a tax break for the top 20%, because they are the only people who can afford to have them.
Yeah. You did some articles on housing recently on the housing crisis recently, and there's one where we see that statistics are literally PIOMA or PIOOMA. They're pulling them out of their arses.
Yeah.
And the government is pulling statistics out of its arses. I can't let it go without saying, yesterday, Owen Murphy blamed large families for the rise in homelessness. Blamed large families. And I haven't seen one article that's saying, I was wrong to do that. It's all down to neoliberal politics and too many vultures in the market. So that's allowed pass. That's allowed to get a pass. And I have a problem with journalism with that. When they're putting out these figures, hop on them, destroy them.
I would say just for lack of coverage today, I was off yesterday, hence why there's no scathing piece on it. But generally speaking, we especially with us, I think we do an awful lot of coverage on homelessness, on the cost of it, the volume, the numbers that they bring out, what those Section 10 funding tallies actually are. And I think at the moment, which is something that really has to be gotten back to, and it was in the Oireachtas Housing Committee, I think last week or the week before, Owen Murphy's yet to kind of say where those 800 families and why they were removed. I mean, he's given a vague idea. He's given
the reclassification.
Yeah.
This is where it's wrong. When we talk about people in terms of, I got my friends in inner city helping homelessness were a bit upset with me last night because I mentioned that a few months ago homelessness is not normal was the trending Twitter and they were trying to get this trending. And I say, well, we're at this stage now where I think we have to admit that homelessness is normal because we've gotten to a level where it doesn't matter whether it's 10 or 10,000. We're now talking about numbers as opposed to human suffering and stories and the real costs of this. And I think Martin is right that we have got too often we then have someone who covers it and says, and when they cover it, they talk about, well, the minister says this and Ono Breen says that. And they call that balance. Yeah. And you can't call that balance without saying, why is it acceptable to say that we talk about a reclassification of people? People are people. And we need to look at it in terms of the human stories because, as we know, in events like even the 8th referendum or the marriage equality, it was people's stories that actually impacted and brought about change. And I think very clearly when Micheal was involved with the My Name Is campaign, they were very successful in getting individual stories to embarrass people into action. Yeah. I think that's where this battle is needs to be fought because I really think when we're talking about statistics, I think we're talking the language that suits the Department of Housing and suits the minister because he can talk numbers back at us.
Yeah. Well, numbers that are that have been in a lot of instances very, very cagey. And,
listen, we had Mel Reynolds, Lord Concern, and all the Hegarty in that chair where you sit, and they made mincemeat of his numbers.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that the reclassification thing that's come up that is not something that I certainly intend on letting go is he had said that there was 2 reports coming that were going to explain whether one from the DRHE and one from the interagency group. And it actually slipped my mind entirely when the latest figures came out, or when those reports came out. I actually didn't even notice it wasn't there. I went and watched the Oireachtas Committee that afternoon, and sure enough, Owen Bryn was first to highlight the fact that it wasn't there. And then he brought up a 3rd report. He said there was another report to come. And it was just kind of one of those moments where you're just like, come on. Well,
you see, how can any of us say that government is taking it seriously when they're trying to fudge numbers? I mean, first of all, what's that phrase you have, Tony? What gets
measured gets done.
Yeah.
Now, if you're doing everything you can not to measure it correctly, then absolutely. You have no intent of solving the problem, none whatsoever.
It's I think this some people that are loving the idea of when Damien English comes out and says there's no magic fix and there's no 7 years, you know, like I think people love drawing that. That particular line.
We had who was it? We had on. It was Paddy.
Paddy Cullivan.
Paddy Cullivan was on. He says about Damien English. The first thing Damien goes, where do you get the money for that? Where do you get the money for that? You know, and it's this, or, you'll end up like Venezuela. Or, these completely outrageous, go-to knockbacks. You'll end up like, you know, everybody forgets that Fine Gael's first term in government, they had a choice. And they chose to cut the top rate of tax. They chose to. So when they say, where are you going to get the money from? The money was there. You gave it to the richest in society, and you did.
We're talking about tax cuts in the upcoming budget, and the tax cuts are looking in the region of about 500 million, I think, for certain workers. That half of that will be enough to actually give real, genuine, free education in at primary level, not the. Here, send us your
parents' contribution.
It would, simple things like that. What would you rather? Would you rather actually an extra €3 in your salary, or would you rather know that you didn't have to put up,
actually, in that sense, we have kind of very Trumpian politics here, where tax cuts are concerned. The greatest con in this country is that somebody on 36,000 is taxed the same as somebody who's on 3 million. So they're selling, this is great for the guy on 36,000. This is great. It is great. He's going to get an extra $5. But the guy on 3.5 million is going to get an extra $500,000. Okay, so he's way, way better off.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to sell this, and then that $5 that everybody got was knocked off.
I want to bring that back down to housing, just to get very narrow on this. they're caught between a rock and a hard voting case, okay? Because what they have is, realistically, rising rents and rising house prices are good for a demographic of Irish people, and a lot of them tend to be the ABC ones who like to tend to vote. So it's Fine Gael, they're caught in a hard place because they have to appease their voters, and most of their voters, rising property prices, rising rents, and a general sense of that sort of stuff, that plays right to their hands. So there's an element of where the question has to start asked: is it a crisis or is it policy?
It's policy.
Yeah, but you can't just come out and say that. You have to show economically why it makes.
Well, there's one thing. There was one moment since the start of this year that I began to fully believe that it was policy in a lot of ways. That it was policy to make maybe not policy, but inadvertently make property more expensive, and that was when Murphy said that he was going to lift the height restrictions. That was a week after the department's own report that took like a year that said that you can achieve the same thing with density. You go denser, you can achieve the same amount of houses. And they went out and they brought that, and then overnight, all the land value in the country, all the land value in the city centre is worth a fortune just from that one incentive.
Yeah,
and it's just.
But that's not accidental.
No, well, it's not it's very hard to balance the two when your own departmental report, which it's seemingly, from what I've been told, was written by an exterior source, is basically saying that you don't need to do it, and then, funnily enough, a week later you do.
And only today, one of the major developers announced that they've bought land to build up to, I think it's 2,750 homes. And based on what they've paid 45,000 per site.
Yeah.
You know, you can't buy land for 45,000 per site and make affordable housing.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. The numbers don't add up. When up the road, we know O'Coolan did it for £1,000 and built a house for 163,000.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at these houses won't hit market for less than 380, just factoring in build out costs, you know, your taxes, your fees, and all your light heat and all that has to go into it. So that's not affordable housing, and it's not a solution.
Affordable housing doesn't seem to have been something that has been thought about for the last 5 years, to be honest.
Or 10.
Yeah.
10 even.
I mean, the rent scheme in Dún Laoghaire, it's still not started. I mean, that was announced years ago. I mean, the most confusing thing for me is, like the O'Coolan model, I hate that this conversation has been had 1,000 times over, but why are they not releasing the land? Why are they not getting private partners even to just go up and build 30 houses there, build 30 houses there, here's the land. And then if obviously the local authorities don't like the idea of subsiding land, then fund the land giveaway from central government funding or from low interest loans or something.
We had Orla on, and Orla was exceptional, and she said what you need is a flotilla, like a Dunkirk, when you have all these small builders coming in, doing the 30 houses, doing the 20 houses, and there's competition within these people.
Yeah.
But what we have is an accountant working in who hasn't a single employee to his name going, here's my price.
Yeah.
And they get the job.
Yeah.
And everything then is built up after that. And of course, everything's overruns, everything's expensive. There's layers upon layers upon layers of profit to be added.
Can I get back to what you've said there? Why we have to have this conversation over and over and over? I don't think for a second that if we had Owen Murphy in the chair here and we were having the conversation and we went down through, you know, the as Martin says, the stuff we learned from osmosis from Lorcan and Mel and Orla and Hugh Brennan and Mick Byrne, who spoke about, you know, the models in Denmark and all of these models actually work and are financially viable, sustainable. You build, you know, houses that have better environmental standards and all of these things, wonderful things that we can do. I don't think he'd disagree with you.
Yeah.
The problem is then when he leaves here and he walks down and gets in his car and drives back to Leinster House and speaks to the Department of Housing down in the Customs House Quay down there, his mind has changed because what happens? Do they just lose their nerve?
I mean, to be honest, to be fair to Owen Murphy, he's a very, very good speaker, and I do think he's a very, very good politician, and I think he's a lot of very good qualities about him. And then what you're saying there, but when he goes back to the Department of Housing, that's happened to 4 people or 5 people, and you kind of have to get to the point. I did an interview with Conor Skean about a year and a half ago now at this stage, And obviously there's qualms about some of the stuff that Conor said, but he considered Alan Kelly to be the best housing minister there was because he was so aggressive and so he fought for everything that there was to fight for.
Yeah.
Like we've seen Alan Kelly, like Alan Kelly's an angry man at times, you know.
Self-declared angry man.
Exactly. Like, so I mean, if he can go in there and the same thing happens there, and the same thing happens with Phil Hogan before him, and then Cogley then after, and Cogley's the tonnage then, and then went on to become Minister for Foreign Affairs and is heading up the Brexit talk. I mean, he's more than competent politician, but it's still, well,
yeah. I understand.
Nonetheless, he's still achieving what
from failure to failure with no lack of enthusiasm.
With no loss, success is going from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
But what I'm saying is, I totally agree with you in terms of that conversation. It goes back to the civil servants that have been there long before.
Yeah, the permanent government. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, you kind of have to wonder what conversations they're having there. Is there capacity issues there? Is there things where they'll just turn around to the minister and say, "Sorry, we don't have the man."
Well, actually, I think it's fiefdoms. I don't think there's big conversations going on. I think everybody protects their own fiefdom within there, and they are fiefdoms. They're like in principalities. When you have people who are that powerful, who are untouchable in any way, I mean untouchable, completely untouchable.
You know, one of my favorite stories is the Roman consuls. When you finally you climb the hierarchy, you serve all your time all the way up through, and then you get your year at it, and you get your delictors, the lads that walk around with you with the scythe, the scythe, and they have their robes and all the rest of it. The lictors get the job for life, and they're allowed, if someone gets close, they're allowed to swing the axe, kill people, whatever, assassinate people. And they would look at the council going, listen, you'll be gone in a year, mate. We'll still be here. Yeah. And I often think in terms of, we haven't really evolved much beyond that, because what happens is, as Martin says, a minister comes in and he gets told, there's a green button on your desk and a red button on your desk. And listen, just press this button here and we'll get you some photo ops, and ignore the other one over there. And I think that there's an element of, they're there to get re-elected. And as you say, good competent people who go into politics with the intention of changing the world or making a difference. And then maybe the term that we like to use about a lot of things, they get captured.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I think we need, as I know it sounds really, really, really pie in the sky, but it's not. If I go in and I buy something, I always go on about the Consumer Protection Code says if I buy a good and it's faulty, I can get my money back. If I elect someone on a basis of something, I shouldn't have to wait 4 years to get him out. I should say, listen, you promised 4 things here. You reneged on your passing grade is 41%. I'm afraid you're at 33%. Go. I'm not asking for 100%. I'm asking for a passing grade. And if we can't achieve that sort of stuff, we don't have accountability. And I suppose
I've mentioned it before. Australia has a sort of a court system, whereas if you get a decision or some process from the civil service that you're not happy with, it can be adjudicated upon independently. Yeah. And it's very successful and works very well in Australia. And if there's a country in the world that bloody well needs it, it's here. Yeah. And it's not expensive to run in Australia. It's really not expensive to run. You go in, you make your case that they've treated me unfairly, and the decisions are generally accepted because they're respected decisions by all sides. Yeah. So we could well do with something like that. And here, we never see the people who make the big decisions in Ireland. You ask people who's the General Secretary of XY department, they don't know, no idea. And if you say to them, well, this is the genesis of this person has been, and you follow the career path the whole way through, and you can show all the tangents of it. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. It's really interesting stuff.
For nerds like us,
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think that's the most frustrating part of it all, in that, like, even if there was no confidence motion flying around Eoin Murphy right before the abortion referendum, I mean, the timing of that was opportune, to say the least. But then as well, I mean, you also have to be slightly critical of Sinn Féin and say, when the abortion referendum passed, homelessness is still gone through the roof, and they seem to have backed off entirely from it. But the likelihood is, if we did go through an election, we're still probably going to see Fine Gael as the majority party, and then something else, maybe Sinn Féin, or maybe more independents, or whatever it might be. So you're still looking at someone who's probably going to be quite similar to Eoin Murphy again. And
well, I know, I'd say Eoin O'Brien has his eyes on that if it is them.
But can you see that really happening?
I couldn't actually.
No, I couldn't. I think Simon Harris is doing so well in health that I think he has to go into housing.
That's the solution. That's the way forward.
Oh no, you watch now, because look, I could see them getting the housing ministry and being told, oh, you made all sorts of promises, in there you go now, and let's see the colour of your money, Mr. O'Brien. And look, we've had Owen in here, and he's a very competent and very impressive guy, and I think I would welcome his appointment. I'm not going to prejudge how he do, but I certainly would welcome his appointment.
It's something, even from covering the area in general, I must admit I'd be fascinated to see how that would go. I would just like to see, would it work? Would he figure it out? Would he be able to deliver affordable rents? Would he be able to curb rising prices and stuff like that? While keeping everyone happy, which is a very difficult thing to do.
I think once you get into that department, your first thing would have to be all these lucky people who get transfers to different departments. Yeah. You're gone. Yeah. You're gone. You're gone.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing as well. If he did get in, he would be hated by the people that are in there. He would, as in, so much so that you kind of think, is that feasible? Is that workable? Or does he go in and do a massive clear out? And will he be able to do a massive clear out?
I've had this conversation before. In the States, when an administration moves on, they take their top civil servants with them. Okay? And here we just leave them there.
Yeah.
So you have this layer that actually run the country. They bring in the gobshites to press the green button for advertising. They have this down to a fine art. Minister, would you like a photograph? Yeah, press the green button. Press the green. So stop arguing with us and press the green button.
So, just to bring us to a close, right? Listen, folks, journalism has a value, right? Michael's a young man making his way in the world. Do support journalism.
I need to buy a house in 50 years.
I'm saying a lot. Like, I saw a blind boy come back out and said that he's going to subscribe, and I think the Times is one of the ones he named, that he subscribes to a couple of places to get that overall opinion. Now, I'd hold my hand up. If I had the money to subscribe to the Times, I'd subscribe to the Times.
I really appreciate that.
But what I do is I just usually wait till somebody else filters it through and get the article out.
Martin says we screenshot that.
We need to figure out a way to block that.
I do actually recommend it. This is really interesting. Just screenshot that.
Honestly, just last question then. Where do you think it'll be in 5 years' time?
That's a very good question.
You'll be living in a hub. You'll have
all the amenities you could possibly want. A shared room,
homework club,
tepid water. No, honestly, the journalism or the housing crisis.
No, journalism.
Well, it's both the same. It's your generation are being offered these professional hubs where your girlfriend can live across the corridor, but have a child and you're out, man. You're gone.
Honestly, I think, because I was speaking to a guy from Grant Thornton recently who's done a report for the Irish Times, and it wasn't overwhelmingly optimistic about the futures of the industry in general. I think we'll eventually we're very close to bottoming out. I certainly hope so, that we're very close to bottoming out. And then, this is just me being the optimist, that gradually finance starts to come into it, revenue starts to come back into it, that people start paying for news, that people start realizing the difference between quality journalism and not quality journalism, and realize what goes up on your Facebook feed isn't reliable at all. And it just I think it's just a trigger. I think once it becomes normal to pay for news, we'll be fine. Once that happens, and that's going to be a really, really tough battle, especially in Ireland, because in the UK, you have people who subscribe to newspaper deliveries, which the port worked so much easier. But in Ireland, you go down to the shop it's part of the social experience that you go down and you get the actual physical paper and you come back. So it's basically negotiating that new deal with Irish readers, basically, and Irish listeners. And once we eventually get that, I think
papers came through everybody's letterbox.
That's long before my day.
It's not really that long ago that everybody got papers delivered, and your Sunday papers were delivered. I mean, I remember the Sunday papers coming in through the front door.
Yeah.
So you have paper deliveries in other countries. I mean, it's very small here now, but I mean, if you can get them on, if you can get them to tick the box and just start. But I think the reason they stopped is because the same reason the milkman stopped. They couldn't get paid.
Yeah.
I think that was the same reason.
I suppose it's the attitude for me towards getting your newspaper regularly was having that delivered to your door. So therefore, in the UK, subscriptions in the UK for us are doing very, very well, and they seem to have a massive target of about 1 million subscribers by 2020 or 2021, which would be incredible. But that they maintain when they did the presentation to us, the difference was that people were used to paying like €20 came out of their bank account every month anyway for the Sunday Times, the Times in the UK, or whatever it might have been. So it's just basically trying to get that model to work in Ireland. Honestly, if I'm being totally truthful about it, I think it will work in a reduced form. I don't think we're ever going to have that mass delivery of constant subscriptions coming through. But I do think they will eventually bottom out to a bedrock of people who pay, and then those softened paywalls around the Irish Times and the Indo may one day go behind theirs as well, and ourselves will cater then for everyone else, I'd say. That's the way I see it in 5 years' time.
Look, best of luck, and I know we were making fun earlier, but it's not like we're doing this, we're having a bit of fun with it, but we know even the money that we put into this for putting it out there, doesn't make sense for us either. But for the crack that we're having, you know what I mean?
But it doesn't come for free, and there's the bottom line. It doesn't come for free. Somebody has to pay for it somewhere along the line. If you're listening to this, it cost me and Tony money to put this out.
Yeah.
We're not making a cent out of it. Not a cent. But yeah, he's right. We'll do it for the crack. We enjoy the crack of it. But that can't keep going either.
No, I'm sick of looking at you. Jesus, I'm sick of looking at you.
Very fair.
Oh no, look, we do appreciate you coming in. I do think we're in a period of change, and hopefully, people will understand that news has a value, and that actual good news and good journalism has a value. Thanks for listening, folks. Do, as Martin said, do show your appreciation. We're not asking for much. Hit subscribe, tell your friends, leave us a review. Look, we're only doing it because we were feeding our egos. Is that what you said, Martin?
Coming into the summer, it takes a few clicks to put up an iTunes review. So all you do is take the few clicks, be the person that reads past the 200 words. Be that person. Leave a review, because Tony's so on my case all the time. So please leave a review.
See you, folks.